All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody so much for joining us today. I feel very lucky that we're able to all connect today and talk a little bit about how to keep the team's morale up during this tough time. How do you address a lot of these concerns that the teams might have? So what I could do first is if each one of you want to introduce yourself, give a quick bio, a little bit about what you do, a little bit about your experience, that would be great. And then we can go ahead and dive into questions. So let's start with Stephanie. You're on top left, so I'll start with you.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. We're in a very interesting time, and I just feel honored to be able to help in this way and be alongside such powerhouse people. So thanks for having me. So my background is in broadcast communications, and then switched into being the founder of Goetz Communications. So mine is all around how do you communicate, be transparent and vulnerable, especially in a time like this, to help support your teams. A lot of the work I do is around media training and communications and presenting, but right now it's interesting to see it really shift to this warm, supportive, understanding, what can we do for you sort of tone. And so we'll touch on that to talk a little bit about how that will help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Josh?
Hey, I'm Josh Pepper. I'm the VP of product at a company called Axon. They're headquartered in Scottsdale, Arizona, but they have a major technology office here in Seattle. I lead a team of about 50 folks distributed across software engineering, product design, and some customer onboarding resources. And yeah, we shifted to all kind of working from home in a pretty sudden and swift manner. And a lot of what I've been challenged with is trying to find solutions for kind of keeping team cohesion, ensuring that the right communication rhythms and cadences are in place, and really addressing head-on people's fears, people's anxieties, and people's stress levels for what could be happening. Our customers are actually the public safety market, so we make products for law enforcement, fire, medical, emergency services. Specifically, we are right in the middle of taking our first customer live at a 911 operations center. And I talk to customers every week, and some of them are literally sheltering in place, meaning that there are 911 dispatchers who are sleeping on cots at public safety answering points around the country, and there's nobody entering or exiting the building. So our customers are doing significantly more and are withstanding a lot more stress than we personally are. So that always helps to kind of just set the bar high for how we can help our customers. So we talk more about that later.
Thank you, Josh, so much. I'll go to Alex.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Martinez. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Lupa Bio. We are a venture capital-backed therapeutics company. We started about 2 years ago, and it certainly is an interesting time for us. We recently received FDA feedback to go ahead for a chronic inflammatory disease, but with COVID-19, we have an acute inflammatory disease problem today. And as a result, the traditional clinical development path that we had is no longer relevant. And, for us, we want to address major problems in human health, and this is the most pressing problem. So we're actually pivoting the entire company to see what we could do to address the acute inflammatory distress that's driving a lot of healthcare utilization we have. And what sort of magnifies the challenge we have is we use a very distributed network, primarily of consultants and contracting groups. So it's managing a very fragmented team that never was internal to rise to the challenge that we need to adapt to.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come back to that in just a little bit. Thanks, Alex. Gaetano?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Gaetano Franceschi. I work at Amazon. I've been at large companies my whole career. I've worked at Amex, Citigroup, and now Amazon. For me, I actually worked in New York during 9/11. This is very different than that. This is much more sort of personal, and it touches people kind of across the globe. So it's kind of unprecedented, but also in some ways it's uncovered some interesting ways to interact with the team. So, look forward to the conversation.
Thanks for that. And Paul.
Well, thank you very much. I'm flattered to be included in this august lineup we've got right here. I'm a retired soldier, spent a lifetime preparing soldiers for war and executing expeditionary operations. So, the stressors associated with high intensity training and the stressors associated with actual combat operations we try to stress in training so that the actual conduct of operations overseas is actually easier and more gentle than what we do in training. Currently, I work with the 501c3, the Vet Voice Foundation, with mission to give a platform for veterans to influence policy outcomes, both public and domestic, and a 501c4, Vote Vets, with mission to assist veterans in election to high office. So my privilege to be here. Thank you.
Thank you everyone so much. And just a little bit about me, I'm Tatya, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Upnotch. This is actually a third product that I've built, and it is to help connect people, mentor each other, and really share knowledge. At the end of the day, that's all it comes down to. We see it more than ever now that we need to be sharing knowledge. We need to come together, and we can make a really big impact in the world. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first question, and feel free to just jump right in, is what have you done to keep your team's morale high since COVID-19 hit? Maybe I'll start with Josh.
Sure, yeah. I think we can get into some of the tactical things maybe later on, but at a high level, I think I'll share some of the maybe lessons that I am learning in the moment rather than some of the things that I may have mastered. I am definitely learning that applying the lessons that I've learned over the years about emotional intelligence and making space for what people are feeling is incredibly important. And as I've looked around for examples from other industries and other leaders really around the world, the folks that I am looking up to right now and the folks that I think are doing the greatest job are really doing, they're kind of making space for one of three big emotions that I think just about everybody is feeling. One is fear. People are afraid of what's going to happen. People are afraid of their loved ones dying. They're afraid of touching a park bench and getting a fatal virus. They're afraid of losing their job. And I think just recognizing that you are afraid of something as a leader is a huge thing. I think secondly, people are anxious. They're worried about taking care of their kids at home. They're worried about homeschooling. I've got 2 kids with special needs. I am certainly, scared shitless that they're going to come out the other end of this 6-month period and they're going to be behind the 8 ball rather than ahead of this. So I think as a leader, knowing what you're doing to manage your own anxiety is critical for you to vocalize and express that to your own team. And then the last thing is, and there's been a number of great articles on this online, in particular, I think one in HBR, I think making space for grief. People have lost simple things and they've lost, very high impact things. They've lost their spring break vacation, right? Like they've also, I'm connected to people that have already lost loved ones. At work, people have lost, they're grieving over the loss of a roadmap, a plan, a sales event, a customer call, friends not seen, right? And so there's definitely grief that's happening right now. And so when I look at the most impactful things that I've done personally, a lot of times it is making space for this anxiety, this stress, this fear, and this grief that people are feeling. And I think I am not an expert in this. I do not consider myself to be super high on the emotional intelligence scale. So I look at this as an engineer, like, you know, I'm pretty analytical about this. And so, but I'm learning very rapidly. These are the three big things I got to focus on.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Josh. Stephanie, do you want to also take that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tatya. And great words, Josh. I echo a lot of those. I think a couple of things that I'm seeing when I talk with executives and their teams, and just the overall advice is you can't over communicate enough. It's just impossible. So communicating as much as quickly as you can is really helpful. For those leaders and managers to be seen and heard often is very, very helpful. Also being super transparent, like Josh said as well, that vulnerability and that showing that we're all human and experience this in different levels is going to be very important. But I think that one of the best pieces was being flexible with your workers who are at home, but still setting expectations. There's daily things they have to do. There's weekly, and there might be even yearly and a few months out things that you're actually still working on and able to plow through. But you know that there might be just emotionally, they might not be able to handle this right now. So how can you step back? And the biggest thing you can do is ask questions. So if you can be there visible and maybe even have like a weekly or every few day check-in of just time to vent, time to honestly ask respective questions and feedback, that could be a huge thing, because often people just want to be heard. And you might find out that you thought it was one thing, but it was really something else that was bothering them in all of these sets of issues. And then if there's a way to give them some control, that's huge. I think everyone feels like we've just spun completely out of control and we can't have any sort of grasp on this. And especially for workers who are on site. I think there was a question about a manufacturing plant that they have workers that are there every day. How do you keep that morale going? It's not much different. The communication is key, being incredibly transparent and honest with them, and more daily check-ins, but having that empathy with it to truly go, so really, how are you doing? What can we do? And then creating that solution around giving them some things that they can control, whether it's giving them some control on a new way or formula that something is going to be going in an initiative, or whether it's even bringing in someone to help talk to them. Like I've heard of places bringing in doctors or therapists, either on Zoom, or if it's a manufacturing type of locale that you could actually bring someone, within the precautions on site. But I think all of those pieces of being able to show that you're all human in this together is going to be paramount through all of this. And when possible, bring in some levity. Like we all like a little humor every once in a while, respectfully and appropriately. So is there a way to take minds off things and actually embrace some of this beauty that we're also seeing in this time and the good that's happening?
Those are really good tips. Thank you for that, Stephanie. We have a question here, unless somebody else wants to jump in. Gaetano, do you want to jump in from the Amazon's perspective? What you have?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not, I don't know that it's Amazon's perspective. It's more like, how I'm approaching things myself, but with the team. I think Stephanie got it right. I think we also try and inject some levity in the day, because it is a little bit overwhelming for everybody. Some of the things we're doing is, spending a lot more time we have like a daily, not daily, but like a weekly lunch Zoom that we do together, and we chat about things. In fact, it's been one of the things for me. It's been nice meeting other parts of the family. So I work with people and I see them every day. I actually don't know their families unless I've met them in other forums, but you see them because they're in the house, and so that's been really, really cool. And I know who has kids and stuff like that, but you kind of forget it on a daily basis. It's been very nice to actually get to know people in a different perspective, and I think that's nice. I agree with Josh on kind of fear, anxiety, and grief. Ultimately, for me, and what we do as a team is we try and be, we're trying to be flexible with everybody's needs. I am spending a lot more time on shorter bursts of communication and video calls and stuff like that, just to make sure that people are engaged, but also have a chance to voice if they're having concerns or issues. So it's been interesting.
Thank you for that. Paul, do you want to add anything?
Sure, thanks. So I'll throw out an anecdote here that I worked at very close range. The National Military Command Center is the highest operations office in the United States in the Department of Defense. And that's where it's manned 24 hours a day by the two key guys. That's where the release of launch codes occurs, should that ever happen. So there is a perpetual state of tension that exists at the heart of the NMCC. And I watched a fairly ruthless three-star general leave, and we've heard the term emotional intelligence, a guy with an abundance of emotional intelligence come in, and he knew what he was stepping into. So the first meeting that we go to, and I was his assistant at the time, we have a lieutenant colonel and a major manning the center part. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, we take a brief on what's happened in the previous 12 hours. They were very nervous. And that's not what you want in a command center, is a bunch of nervous guys worried about what the boss is going to do. And immediately, the new guy, the new three-star, cracks a couple of jokes, lowers the threat level a little bit, to Stephanie's point on levity. Stunning what a little bit of humor can do to reduce the tension, increase clarity of thought, and the ability of subordinates to interact with their leader. Now, in the Army, we have the luxury where the leader tends to be, if not substantially older, certainly older, far more experienced. And there's a sense that you wish to create your organization that when that leader comes into the room, folks relax, they approach, they deliver, and they are able to do that without fear that if they say one little thing wrong, that there's going to be retribution. So it's dad calmly walking into a room and bringing forth the best thoughts that the other smart people in the room can do. That created a situation that the word got out. What had been a four-man meeting became a standing room only, because at 6 in the morning, people didn't have to be there, but they wanted to be there to understand what was going on, to be in on the action, and to be associated with this new three-star boss. So thanks, Tatya.
Thanks, Paul. Alex, I'm actually going to throw a new question at you. We have a question here from Larry. When you see 10 million people claiming unemployment with strong likelihood of increasing numbers about to hit the unemployment insurance claims, how do you filter that for your team?
So, I think it goes a bit to what we've all discussed, which is, candor is critical right now. And, even if you're pivoting, a pivot includes releasing people, having full transparency on, what you're going to do for your business, why you're doing it, how it's going to be done, who's going to be instrumental to the pivot, as well as who it's going to impact, is really, really, really important. It's something that we do openly. We use a lot of consultants, a lot of contractors. Those are people that are easily cut. They're all at will, right? Those are people as we adapt and make decisions. However, we're treating them as if they were employees in terms of the transparency of decision making, the timelines, and then also making ourselves accessible. It's just very important. And just to let people know, we also share that personal aspect, because I think this is a very personalized experience that we're all going through. So having that empathy. So I have a wife that's 7 months pregnant that we did a temporary layoff to. We discuss it with her boss to enable that clinic to remain open. And so we're all doing our part. And so sharing what you're doing personally what you're doing professionally, how you're making decisions, how you're balancing between those who are staying on, those who might be let go, is going to be really important. And then there's also another opportunity which we don't discuss, because you think you're going to be laid off and you're going to be sitting there and collecting unemployment. Well, how can we work with you to make sure that your skill set doesn't perish? How can you continue to learn? And also, how can we maintain two-way communication so that if an opportunity does arise at your former company, we can quickly fold you back in? Or how can we enable you to find another opportunity?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You guys have all touched on communication, really keeping an open, candor communication. What about if you do have to cut costs? And how do you start to communicate that in terms of where do you have to start cutting costs? And if somebody's job is going to be on the line, at what point do you start to communicate that? And what if you don't know if it's going to be on the line? It's kind of like, if this happens, then it will. If this doesn't happen, then it won't. How do you communicate that and also keep them motivated?
Sure, and I think, and I can just comment a little bit of that and then let the other panelists go on. Again, is the promise and demonstration of transparency is really important, right? Yeah, I mean, a lot of fear is driven by uncertainty. So clarifying timelines and sticking to them is really, really important on decision making, so people know what to expect when, and they also understand the decision making process is going to be absolutely critical to that kind of stuff.
Thanks, Alex. Anybody else want to comment on that?
Well, I can't talk about Amazon, but I can talk about my previous experience. So at American Express and then Citigroup as well, I worked in financial services during the financial crisis. And so I think what Alex said is important. And I hate quoting other people, but the CEO of Amex at the time when we went through the financial crisis, whenever he had his town halls, he would say, to define reality and give hope. And I think that's kind of a good way to think about it. One is you want to be truthful and honest, and if people ask you, you want to be honest about what you know and what you don't know. At the end of the day, though, there is a reality, right? And so I don't know whether this particular moment in time, we'll see what happens. But in the financial crisis, it was a continuous rolling amount of layoffs. And I think if you help people through the mental process around, if you're honest with them and you help them through the process of, okay, this is what's happening. This is not specific to you. These are like the circumstances. This is the realities, things like that. I think people have a better way of accepting it. It's hard, right? And especially if you're one of the target, it's hard. But if you're transparent and honest, I think people will have a tendency to accept it more.
Thank you, Gaetano.
I can add something to that too, Tatya. I echo all that's been said, and to add to that too about the importance of candor and transparency and honesty. They're all saying this as well, but to kind of reiterate, it's got to be genuine too, because people can sniff out people spinning a message like a mile away, and it's very interesting. We've all been there. We've all experienced it, of being in a group of colleagues where your boss or the boss's boss says something, and then all of a sudden it's telephone, and by the 10th person who hears it, it's totally different. And so to mitigate that just firestorm of one person hearing it and then like it's all mixed up and jumbled by the time it's the 10th, 20th, 1000th person, that's where that, just like Gaetano said, of what the CEO had mentioned about just being honest, but also giving that hope. So you have to be honest and sometimes brutally honest, but people will respect you more for that. And there's always a solution, I believe, that can come out, even if the solution is right now, especially more than ever, what I keep hearing is like, we don't know what we don't know right now. So we're looking a fog that's a foot in front of us. So what we do know is blank. What we do know is a week from now, we're planning on this, or what we do know is we can do this tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And so any sort of control or absolutes in those regards can be helpful to show some of that hope, to show some of, here's what we do know, and we will continue to update you as you go. But having that like real genuineness, I think that's going to definitely separate the good from the great when we get on the other side of this too.
Can I ask just one thing to what Stephanie said, because I think it was well said. For me, it's, and this is true in general anyways, not just in sort of crisis situations, if you will, is focus on what you can control, because the rest of the stuff is just a distraction, right? And so again, going back to when I worked in financial services during a crisis, when you're in a crisis and you have to focus on 2 things every day, it's a lot easier than if you have, 15 to 20 things. And that in some ways, that makes things a lot easier. I don't think it's very different now. So I think the uncertainty is a lot higher now than it was, so it's hard to say where this is going to go, but just focus. I kind of tell my team all the time, and whenever I talk to them, just focus on what you can control, and don't worry about the rest of the stuff. The rest of the stuff will happen whether or not you worry about it or not. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for that. What about people that are actually, the question that we have here, what about the people that are affected because they're actually working on site and they're not at home? So they have even higher levels of fear because they can't be at home taking calls. They have to be at work and they have to expose themselves, and they're now at risk of getting infected, getting their families infected, mainly getting their kids, their elderly parents infected. How do you deal with somebody who's potentially more vulnerable and has a really high set of fears?
I'll give it a shot. In the Army, we never want a soldier to be alone, physically alone, or intellectually alone. You have to have a buddy system in effect. And one of the things that, one of the reasons soldiers will do the extraordinary is that they believe in their chain of command. They know that their chain of command is not going to leave them high and dry, that they're going to run out of ammunition, food, or water, that if they're hurt, they're going to be medevac, that that the chain of command really does believe in the golden hour. We've got a problem right now in our medical system, and an unconscionable lack of supplies to protect our men and women who really are on the front line. And my great fear here is that even though they are working in a collaborative environment and in hospitals and in ERs and in very tough places, that there is a feeling that their chain of command has let them down. And that crack in trust is going to take us a long time to repair, because we're in a place that the United States should not be. And we have got to move as very quickly as we can to ensure that the frontline men and women do not feel that they have been cut loose and hung out to dry. And I fear that that's exactly what many are thinking.
It's a really good point, Paul. Thank you for that. I love the buddy system. I think that's so important. Anybody else want to comment on that? And we do have a question here. What are some of the most impactful, slightly more tangible things we can offer employees right now? Examples, flex times, transparency, honesty is great, but if we've got that covered, what else should we be doing?
Yeah, I'll take that on. I should note that the answer that I'm about to give is really only in place because of the company that I work for and the executives that are at the top of Axon, who have already decided that we're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that we keep our most amazing asset, which is our employees, right? I have met with a lot of my team who are really struggling to figure out how they're going to cobble things together right now. This is disproportionately parents and disproportionately, unfortunately, moms. You know, I have not spoken to a single mom on my team that has not said, this is incredibly hard for me to get what I need to get done. Also, now I'm a teacher. Also, now I am taking care of kids, right? I think for us, offering everybody on the team, you know, first of all, you say, like, come to me if you need to talk about what are some options. And you need to, for us, we've said, if you want to have some kind of flexible schedule here, of course, right? That's, I think, the first option. And then obviously we are open to any other, you know, temporary leave or, you know, reduced working hours or whatever it is. This is, I think, the thing I keep reminding my peers and my team is that this is not a working from home situation. This is a global depression brought on by a global pandemic. And it's time for kind of exceptional action here. So we want to have exceptional allowances for people to change up their schedule, whatever that means. And you know, we have gone back and forth as leadership many times in our company in the past 4 weeks on kind of two sides of the same coin. One is saying, should we offer the same set of blanket options to everybody? Okay, anybody can stop work on Fridays, or anybody can not work afternoons, or whatever you might come up with that might be a solution here. And each time we come back to, please talk to your manager, right? And we're heavily relying on our managers, our first line managers, to work with the individual contributors in the company to understand what is the exact situation you're in. And I myself have kind of almost jumped the gun several times to say, no, we need to give a blanket allowance for everybody. Everybody, you know, gets long weekends. Everybody gets, you know, doesn't have to work as much. We need to take all deadlines and move them back, or whatever it is. But really the right answer has kept on being like, look, managers, it's your job in this time to determine what your people need to stay safe, to stay healthy, and to keep your family together. And if everybody's situation is different, and guess what? This is the time for line managers to shine. This is your opportunity to understand that different people are going to need different things. So I'm looking at this list and the question here, and there's a bunch of kind of specific things. I think all of those are allowable tools in the toolkit, but I think the primary tool is being a great manager and understanding that different people require different allowances.
Thanks, Josh. That was very well said. I think, you know, some of the things about moms working, you know, a lot of them are not working as many hours as they would if they had to go to the office. And then the people who don't have kids or who have older kids, they're working many more hours. So have you guys seen that imbalance of some people working more and some people working less?
You know, I think it's a little bit tough to kind of monitor. You know, we're in a bit of a privileged situation at my company. We were designed to be a virtual company from the get-go, and we were also designed to work on 80-20 principles. Really, okay, so what are the 20% of critical activities that are going to achieve about 80% of the business objectives? And I think that every organization and sort of every department, and you can really, you know, kind of take this almost in a fractal perspective and look at those principles. And then if you focus on the 20% of things that are going to keep the lights on, keep the you know, advancing towards business objectives, you actually have a lot more flexibility for those people that do have to accommodate things. And as long as they hit that 20% of tasking and activities, they are contributing in a very meaningful way. So I think that's kind of a top-down interrogation that then from that analysis, you actually create the flexibility to accommodate different people. And I think it also touches base on trust, because trust is really important. So if you're able to whittle things down and empower people and trust them, then all of a sudden it's not the same kind of hours in. That's busyness. That's not productivity. So reorienting people towards productivity for your business and their role in moving that forward, and as well as, you know, at home and managing their personal life. I think that's something really important. And just to give a very tangible example of how we do this, we have 2 hours a day that are the expected overlap. That's it. And then everything else, we have check-ins and just make sure the critical path activities are going on, and we're granting very broad flexibility and giving people a lot of trust.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I'll share something that I do. I have my Zoom on the entire day. So anyone can just join in. Anybody from my team can just literally just join in. I don't even know, it just beeps and somebody joins in and I see who they are and they can ask me a question. So they don't even have to write anything in a chat. They don't even have to call me or message me. They can literally just, and it's the same Zoom every time. It just repeats itself. So I do that, and I hope my team has found it really useful, but that's something very small that you can do as well. We have another question. What are some unique ways to show appreciation and celebrate victories, big and small, with everyone working remotely? And I do love the, you know, the lunch every week. So I think that's something that can definitely work for that too. But what else have you guys seen that can help the team?
Just a small one, alcohol. We've already delivered quite a bit of alcohol to certain team members who have been working overtime at a bunch of things. Ordinarily, we'd be out drinking together to celebrate some of these things. And, you know, and there's certainly people who don't drink, you got to recognize that. But other people are like, God damn it, I deserve a whiskey for that. And you're like, all right, I'm going to find a way to get you a bottle of whiskey, my friend.
I love that, Josh. Thanks for sharing.
Well, one other thing that's a great thing, going off of you know, what Josh is saying about, you know, how do you find appreciation, right? Small businesses, which are the backbone of our economy, you know, I was reading very disturbing stats about cash balances. They're already folding. They don't know when they're going to start up. A lot are, you know, issuing gift cards at a discount. Why not reach out to local businesses proximate to your employee that are still doing delivery, still doing takeout, buying gift cards, helping that local community's economy, and showing appreciation for your employee.
I love that. That's definitely something that everybody can be doing. Thank you for that. Anybody else?
Now, I know you don't want to be spending a whole bunch of money in this time frame, you know, but also another way to help, and the power of sending something really personal, like some flowers. Like a friend of mine, unfortunately, her mother experienced a severe medical issue during this time too. And I was like, I don't know if they're still delivering or what's going on. And she's like, I don't know if you realize the impact that having that other piece of life in our kitchen, to be able to look at, to smell, to know that like things bloom and there are seasons and everything. And that there is, it was just amazing to see something like that. And of course I had to send chocolate because come on, everyone's getting into quarantine 15, I think. So she was very, so those kinds of things that you can do, little bits. And if possible, even if you can recognize an employee on a call for little things and big things, because people I think need to feel validated and just feel heard. And because that's free, that kind of appreciation can go really far right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Have any of you experienced any kind of pivoting during this time? I mean, Alex, you talked a little bit about that. And sometimes pivoting can be very difficult for companies. Maybe, you know, if you're bigger or even if you're smaller, but what, you know, how has that impacted your team, and what are some of the suggestions you can give us if you do have to pivot because, you know, sales has come to a stop, or you're just seeing that the direction you were heading is no longer the right direction.
I can tell you a story that happened during Hurricane Andrew. I was the operations officer for the 10th Mountain Division, and we have this readiness focus that no matter what's going on in the world, we're going to be prepared for the next conflict. And the 10th Mountain Division was no different at that time. But we got a call to report down to South Florida, to Homestead and to Florida City, the beaten zone from the hurricane, to leave our weapons and show up with chainsaws and establish linkage with the political leadership in the counties and in the towns. And basically, we're here to help. What do you need us to do? And so you take an organization prepared for high intensity conflict and immediately revert to an outfit that is designed to clear lines of communication, clear streets, deliver water, ice, food. And that the American citizen, and we draw our soldiers from the American citizens, obviously, is so quick to be able to do that. Our education, our preparation, our belief in our society allows the pivot that you talk about to happen very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Oh, did Paul cut out? Okay. I think that's so important. What about you, Alex? What have you seen for you guys?
You know, it's interesting. I think we've been lucky enough that, you know, again, we're a pretty nimble organization, but what we've had in this pivot is realities. Our original plan is extended by a year, and we do not have the cash runway to survive that long. And also, so we actually had to dig deep down into our values. It actually made me think of what Paul said about sort of the retasking of those soldiers. Is if the core values are to help and to, you know, protect, you know, Americans and protect lives, anchoring people there is really important as we've looked at that. And so we looked at our DNA and our values and said, this is the right thing to do, just 100%. And so, you know, what we've done is we've done things that may change our economic stake in the company to open up the opportunity for people to collaborate at, you know, a cheaper equity price. We also are very transparent about our lack of expertise. Normally we wouldn't say, hey, we don't know what we're doing here. Instead, we're setting out the lofty vision and actually inviting others to share in with that and others to participate economically if this hypothesis turns out to be true, that we can help people here. So we're actually almost acting like a benevolent corporation as opposed to your standard C corporation solely focused on shareholder return.
Yeah, I really like that. I think it's also, if you can find potentially a greater cause, right? As you pivot, a greater cause that can help people in this time of need, I think it only makes the pivot easier to swallow, and it makes it that much more powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I share another little framework that's been helpful for me?
Please do.
Yeah, so I think the common theme there that also ties together with I see a question here about, after acknowledging the emotions you've referred to, you know, if you want to turn it into action, focus and engagement, kind of what do you do? There's Daniel Pink wrote a great book called Drive. If you haven't read it, it's a wonderful book. Who knows, it's probably been completely disproven scientifically since, you know, I read it, but it's still been useful for me. And in it, he cites 3 big things that motivate people. And these have stuck with me. There are 3 things that I use when I think about how to incentivize and motivate people. And it's purpose, autonomy, and mastery. And I think that those 3 things are really the same things that we can think about as we're trying to motivate teams today. The thing that that Alex, you just brought up there about pivoting is, hey, what's our purpose, right? And I think in this time, the first question that everybody should be asking themselves is, we have a certain set of skills, we have a certain set of core capabilities, our team does, our company does. There is a new problem at hand. Is it appropriate, and can we make a big difference? Can we make a dent in the universe? And should that be our sole purpose right now? Or should we have a new purpose added? We did this at Axon, and we came up with a particular tool that can be used by law enforcement to still interact with citizens, but do it in such a way that they are abiding by social distancing. So it's a mobile app that allows citizens to submit evidence on a case. It's a small thing. It's not gonna turn the world upside down, but it is part of our core purpose, and it's part of our core mission. So we're now offering that for free. Then on the team side, you know, like, I think it's always appropriate to remind people on their team what their purpose is on the team. I just had a manual tester join in Vietnam. You know, this person, their job is to just bang on our software and try and break it all day. And normally in a typical organization, this person might be at the bottom of the food chain or something like that. But this role is critical, right? Purpose hasn't changed, right? You need to remind people of their purpose. Autonomy, I think now that people are working from home, you know, you may have been in a situation where, you know, you're like, Alex, you've managed distributed teams already. We're in a situation where everybody's been in the office. That's what they're used to. So now people are experiencing greater levels of autonomy, but that's a good thing, right? If you say you can autonomously decide how to spend your time, the more autonomy that you can give people, right? I think the more motivated they are. And then the last one is mastery. I think if you are able to frame this problem as this as really an opportunity for people to master something, I think that really is motivating to people. So, hey, I know it's a challenge right now. I know the team, like, especially when I'm talking to my managers, when I'm talking to them and trying to say, hey, this is your opportunity to become a master of crises, like, let's figure it out, right? That's exciting, right? And so those are the three things that I think about when I'm trying to keep engagement high, motivation high, and figure out how do we respond in this crisis. It's the same three things that I normally think about, but in this situation, they're applied in a slightly different way: purpose, autonomy, and mastery.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Josh. I actually had somebody on my team recommend me that book recently, so it's definitely a must read for me too. I have a question here. What do you do with companies who are facing potential technology barriers and working remotely? So if somebody is not able to work remotely, or they don't have the right technologies in place, or they can't access the technologies that they need from working from home. What do you guys say to that?
Well, I'll just jump in here. I'd say what's in the way is the way. So foundational investments in troubleshooting and getting people up to speed. It doesn't matter if it's delivering a hotspot, if they have poor internet, you know, all these things are fairly cheap and still fairly accessible. Mm-hmm. So making these upfront investments in things that seem somewhat trivial is really important. Same thing with ergonomics. This is another thing that's really important. If you expect people to be sitting at home, no one's home is set up for extended, you know, sitting durations. So really kind of doing the foundational work to get people up to speed. And then again, it's a troubleshooting. This is unprecedented. If people don't have access to technology, send it to them. It also shows that they're important. It also shows that you're there for them.
Yeah, thanks for that, Alex. I watched a video, there's a 5-minute video of Simon Sinek doing his team meeting the other day, and he said that this is an opportunity for each of you, he was talking to his team, to reinvent yourself. You know, so that way your job no longer is not important. So how, you know, have any of you experienced that, where somebody's job on your team was no longer as valuable, and so you've had to help them reinvent themselves? And you know, that speaks to a little bit of mastery, Josh. But have any of you had that experience? Nope. That's good. That means everyone's job is still intact. That's awesome. So let's say that you do have to cut resources and you do have to lay people off. What are some of the things that you recommend? What can you help them with? And Alex, you did touch on that a little bit. You touched on a little bit about helping them, get a job or look at get a job or look at other employers or potentially come back to you. Any other tips or suggestions that you guys could offer?
I can give a historical example, which is at my age, that's pretty easy to do. During World War II, we went from a few 100,000 soldiers to well over 12 million. At the end of World War II, we had about 12 million young men, mostly men, few women at that time, wind up demobilized and looking for work. And the United States barely passed the GI Bill that bought all of these men who chose to pick up on it the opportunity to go to school, and it bought them time. It bought them about 3 or 4 years. And the secondary effect of this particular bit of legislation that passed by such a narrow margin was those men who took up the college education challenge became the economic engine of the late 50s and the mid-60s, up to the mid-60s, that just put the United States on a path of prosperity, the likes of which we've never seen since. So that writ large is one way that the United States has managed to do that, and education was the key.
Thank you, Paul, for that insight. We do have 2 more questions here. How can we make contributions to reduce the digital divide between people of different ages, and especially how to carry a high morale message for the people who are most vulnerable to the pandemic? Can anybody jump in to answer that question?
I know this is probably not the answer that Isaac is looking for, but I'm personally making contributions to reduce the digital divide by helping my mom debug Zoom issues for an hour and a half every single day. It's not very broad impact, but it's very deep impact.
No, absolutely. That's actually a really good idea. Connect using Zoom or any other device, even FaceTime, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the other nice things about that is if you go through one troubleshooting experience, that becomes an FAQ. It becomes a protocol to deal with future similar ones. And you'll have slightly different scenarios. Again, using those experiences and sharing them within your organization, all of a sudden it becomes an operational framework to deal with this and hopefully minimize it with future people. So again, I think it comes back to kind of that first concept we talked about, transparency. We're all figuring this out together. So taking issues, working to solve them, and then being very transparent about how those things were solved will just help to kind of reduce these divides.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you spending more time with your team one-on-one than you were before?
Yeah, definitely. We were talking about this right before the call started. I'm spending more time with everybody. I'm spending more time with my directs, with my skips, with kind of everybody on the extended team, with people who are peers of mine in the organization. I think it's just, I think that could be root caused by 2 things. One is we aren't used to working from home. So if we really just decided to work from home, that might be a factor. but it's also just because there's just a lot of uncertainty, a lot of complexity, a lot of volatility happening. Therefore, kind of communication needs to kind of up the level a little bit. Gaetano?
Yeah, I was going to say, previous roles I had people in different places. This particular role, everybody's located in Seattle. So I prior to the situation, I would spend a lot of time just walking around and chatting with people. I've substituted that with like short, we have a thing called Chime, which is the same as Zoom, but Chime meetings, like 15-minute touch bases. I'm trying to deliberately talk to, group of people or one-on-one once or twice a week, just to make sure I'm connected with the team. Not so much on like deliverables or things like that, but just like, how's it going? What's important? Like, how are things going? Are you okay? What obstacles can I help you remove? And then if there's personal things on that as well. But for the most part, people are being very professional about the whole situation. And there's moments of humor too, right? Again, like, we're having these large meetings with Zoom, and like, the dog will bark or whatever. And so there's moments of humor that you actually don't get in a normal work environment that I actually think make it fun in its own way. So it's been a good learning experience.
I'll bounce this into a question, which is like, it's something I've realized just about myself is I do a lot of management by walking around, and I feel super hamstrung now because I'll ping people who are online. I'll be like, hey, do you have a second? And, let's say it's a skip level or something like that. They'll be like, why the hell do you need to talk to me right now? Right. But if we were in the office, I'd just be like, hey, you want to grab a coffee? And within 10 seconds of that opening line, they're like, oh, he just wants to grab coffee. I get it, right? But if I'm like, hey, do you have a second on Slack? They're like, why do you need a second? Why does the boss need a second, right? Like, so I'm really looking for how to translate management by walking around in the virtual world, because I do the same thing you do, Tatcha. I've got an iPad that I have running on my Zoom personal meeting all the time, just off to the side so people can drop in. Nobody's dropping in, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm open to suggestions.
Well, what I do is I remind them every morning because I think they do forget. So I'm like, hey, I'm here in case you need me. Here's the Zoom. And then the next day, hey, I'm here. Gaetano, the lunches that you do you have a rule that you can't talk about work during that lunch?
We don't, but I mean, I'm not big into rules. I prefer like things happening organically. We just don't. It just doesn't, I think we end up chatting about what's going on and what we've read, like what's going on. And, most of my team is in Seattle. I live bi-coastally, so I'm in New Jersey. And so, we talk about what we're reading about and how things are going, so no. I mean, I find like if you're going to do these informal things, don't have a lot of rules, because otherwise it kind of defeats the purpose. People self-select into certain things anyways, so they don't want to talk about work, so it doesn't come up.
Yeah. Last question, and I will go ahead and end this. Being a CEO or director can be difficult and stressful in this situation. What can your team do to help you? Any thoughts on that? That's, I think I'll kind of talk a little bit about personal experience. I think the first week that it hit the US pretty hard in New York, I started to panic. And so I was watching the news 24 hours a day, and I started to really panic and started to organize meetings to decide on what we're going to do and what's our backup plan and how are we going to make sure we hit our revenues and we don't have to cut costs. So, I mean, for me, definitely was something that it hit me really hard for that first week. Paul?
So I'm going to burden you with one more old guy story here. My first memories, I was born in 1950, and my first real legitimate self-acquired memory was the polio epidemic that was going on, and how afraid my parents were that either I or my brothers would come down with polio, the way my 4 female cousins in one home, as boys and girls, we were close, and it happened to their house. And that pervasive fear that existed until the arrival in 1956, I believe, of the Salk vaccine, and all the little kids lined up to take the sugar cube with a little bit of pink fluid on it, and that was it. So historical examples and historical solutions to previous dramas, we're going to get through this. It's not going to be easy. It was not easy in 1955, but we're going to get through this, and the successes in history that we have behind us as a society, I think, need to be discussed. That this is humanity is a great opportunity to see a problem, find a problem, solve the problem, and we're going to be okay.
You're right, Paul.
Yeah, I think that's a really great perspective, Paul. And I think the opportunity we have right now is we have an opportunity to humanize our working relationships. And to the question, it's the same thing we're doing to employees and consultants. We're treating people as people first, and it's the same way. If you can reciprocate there, make sure the person is okay, and then we can switch back into the role as needed to achieve our mutual activities.
Yeah, I really like that. We're all humans, and that comes first before anything else. I really appreciate all of you joining me today. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts. It was a wealth of knowledge that I've gained from our session today, and I hope everyone else did too. So I really appreciate all your thoughts and for joining me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatya. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.